It's my great pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker. Before I introduce the speaker, who doesn't know Sister Jayanti? Probably be easier to start with. Anybody doesn't know Sister Jayanti? Makes my job a lot easier. Sister Jayanti is now the Joint Administrative Head of the Brahma Kumaris and also the Director for Brahma Kumaris activities in Europe and the Middle East. But more than that, she's one of the most influential people in my lives and in probably lots of other people's lives. And I think what it is of over 50 years of self-developing yoga teaching is working on herself. She's been able to get involved and share her vision at a lot of different levels with a lot of different stakeholders, managing to talk with politicians, economists, scientists, business people. She's a UN representative at Geneva. And because Sister Jayanti, I think, finds that the breakdown in values, in personal values, is the core of the crisis that's going on across the world. And we're talking about that today. We're talking about how values have broken down in healthcare are causing the kind of problems we're having in healthcare. So it's a wonderful privilege to have Sister Jayanti to come and share on her views on the topic today. So can I invite Sister Jayanti on stage? And really, the part of it is to understand, Pakita touched on it, what does a soul really, how can we drag that out of us, connect with that, and then use that in our healthcare practices?
This time last week, I was in Baku, Azerbaijan, and you may have heard some glimmers of hope from there, but a lot of it was not very hopeful. And again, you can see the situation in terms of the aggression and violence against nature and the breakdown of human values that has caused the situation out there. In all aspects, it does seem as if it's become a society that's not society, a world, a whole civilization across the world, which has forgotten about spirituality, and therefore values. Values are not in my hands and my feet. The values are within the inner being, the soul. And how often do we use the word soul? It's not part of our vocabulary. And spirituality, the word has been dismissed as something to do with hokey pokey and who knows what else. But spirituality, to be able to go into the depth of the self and to know the self, means to actually know where the source of values lie. They lie within. You can't buy peace, truth, and love out there. Many other words were mentioned. Compassion came up strongly. But any of these values are the values of the inner being, and not the things out there. The negotiations went on way beyond Friday when the conference was supposed to end, but they went on till Sunday morning. And of course, whatever came out of that, there were lots of reactions, especially from the developing world. And some called it tyranny, some called it a cop-out, some had worse names for it. But totally, to me, it was an indication that money rules the world. It's not love, it's not faith, it's not God, but that's the current situation.
Why?
But there's hope, and that's why I can still smile. I've been going to UN conferences for decades, and it's always bad news, and the news gets worse and worse. And part of it is also what WHO has to share at many of these gatherings. And of course, the subject of health and climate change came up in a very big way. As you can imagine, it impacts Britain, it impacts the world, but especially the southern part of the world. So I won't go into the details of that. What is it that gave me hope this time? You've all heard of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, there's a new acronym that's come in, and that's the IDGs, and that is the Inner Development Goals. And that gives me a wonderful hope for the future, not even hope, but a wonderful sense of upliftment. Two people I know very well are involved in this. One is a woman who spoke at the conference by Zoom. She couldn't make it personally. And she's at the University of Lund in Sweden. And she's been heading up a lot of this research in the IDGs. She herself has been a meditator, probably before I knew her, but certainly in the last 15 years that I've known her. And the other person is Peter Senge, and some of you might have heard of him, maybe not, but he has been a business management guru in quite a big way. But an aspect of him that many people don't know is that he's a meditator and has been so for decades, but also he definitely a few years ago, he was meditating 4 hours every day, apart from all his other work. So these two people are deeply involved in the subject of the Inner Development Goals. And of course, you can imagine that the whole thing is revolving around values, the inner core values of human beings. And it feels like when darkness reaches a peak and can go no further, it comes crashing down, and there's a new era that has to begin. Things in the world don't remain static. What may seem hopeless one moment can turn around suddenly, and within your professions, you've all seen that happen. But I also want to add a word of hope for the NHS. A lady who's been working in the NHS many years said to me, nobody talks about the good things that the NHS is still doing now. And I just want to throw in a pitch there, because right now there are at least 4 people, and a couple of them are in the room, who would say that NHS has gone out of their way to help them in their medical issues. And so, yes, I know all the other things that happen because many of you here are my friends, and so I get to hear different aspects. But also, the population and the amount of things that people have to deal with, really, it wasn't like that when the NHS was set up. And when we were celebrating the 75 years of the NHS just a short while ago, people were talking about the changes that have happened in the state of the world and in the state of systems in the world since then. So not surprising that things aren't working as they should. But also, when you think about values, there are actually shared values. There are universal values. Yeah. And we did a survey in 1998. It went on through till 1990. And it was a project that the UN asked us to do because we'd done a lot of work for the International Year of Peace and received 7 Peace Messenger Awards for that work. which was the largest non-fundraising project that happened that year for the Year of Peace. It was very simple. We asked people to give minutes, not money. Time is precious. And so they were giving minutes in meditation, contemplation, or positive thoughts, whatever. And on the back of that, we were asked to do a project called a Peace Messenger Initiative. And what came out of that was Visions for a Better World. And 3 questions we asked people. How do you see your better world? How do you see relationships in that better world? How do you see yourself in the better world? And all those years, 3 years of collecting information from visions from 128 countries, which at that time represented every country that had a population of over 1 million. The map has changed since then. One country is split into 5 different sections, Yugoslavia, many other things also. But certainly that was the picture at that time. And 40 people spent 6 months at our headquarters in Abu, just simply working on trying to understand what people really wanted. It represented people from all the different continents so that they could catch the spirit of what people had sent in, not just the letter. And I can summarize the whole project in one word: your better world, better relationships, better self. One word: values. Then the values were manifold. But again, sorting all that out and connecting with people across the world again, 12 values were given a priority. And out of that came living values. And we wanted to present this to the UN as a gift for their 50 years. And they said, whose values? And we said, universal values. They said, no such thing. And we said, okay, if we show you a draft, would you like to have a look? They said yes. And so out of spiritual teachings, 2 people sat and worked on that and came up with the draft of living values, 12 main values. And they said, yes, it is universal. And that then carried the UN logo. And that became a Living Values project in education. And there were a whole set of books written within a very short space of time by a woman who was working as an educational psychologist during the day. And in the evenings and weekends, she was working on these books. And they're still available. But that's now become a worldwide project called ALIVE, the Association of Living Values Network. And out of that came the idea that values were needed very much in healthcare. And again, several people sitting in the room, and in particular Sarah sitting here, came together to take values in education and see how those values were translated into healthcare. And from that was born Vihasa, the Values in Healthcare, a Spiritual Approach. And I've seen Vihasa go across the world in most continents. I'm not sure that it's in all the continents. I know it's in Africa, it's definitely in Asia, and I don't know how far in America. Yes, I think it's gone there too. So it's gone across the world. But basically, having groups of people in healthcare look at the subject of values and experiment with those ideas. And I'm sure you'll hear more about this at some point if you're interested. And I'm sure there's leaflets out there also. But another thing I want to touch on that's very much related to what Pakita was sharing in great depth. When I came across the subject of positive psychology, my question to the woman who was presenting, and she just received the Templeton Prize for Positive Psychology at that time, some years ago. And my question to her was, well, how come we're only now hearing about positive psychology? We didn't use that term until 40, 45 years ago. And she said that the negative emotions that come like a sledgehammer. And you can measure them very easily in terms of blood pressure and heart rate and all the things you all know about. But when there's positive feelings and emotions, they're subtle and they don't stay very long. And so it's very difficult to measure them. And it's only in recent times that we've been able to have the equipment that can measure the pure positive feelings and emotions like compassion and love and peace and so on. And that's why it's a new topic. But also, I asked her about their research and what is it that they found in terms of developing values and sustaining values. And she said, well, we found that eating food that you like, going to places that you like, all of these things have a very positive influence, and they can be very good, healthy feelings and emotions. And when there are good feelings and emotions, there's good health for the individual, there's a sense of well-being, they have good relationships, they're able to work better, relationships at work are better, they're better citizens, they have a greater sense of responsibility. You tick every box that's positive. And she said it's connected very much, and this is mind and body and society, everything. It's all related to good feelings and emotions. And the next question was, well, out of all the things that you experimented with, what worked best? And she laughed and she said, well, we found that when it's good food, whatever it may be that a person likes, maybe it's chocolate, it takes you to a certain level of well-being and satisfaction, but carry on with it, will your well-being and sense of satisfaction increase? Unlikely. It's going to go crashing down, and you don't want to see chocolate at least for another 24 hours. Maybe you come back to it the next day, but certainly at that moment it's peaked, and any more of it will make you sick. But there was one thing we found that continually enhanced positive feelings and emotions and well-being. Any surprise? Meditation. So it's official. Yep. Meditation creates positive feelings and well-being. And so it's not a surprise to me when I heard her. Why? Because what's happening in meditation is you're connecting with the inner being. And for people who believe in a higher being, a source, a supreme, well, it also connects you there. But even if you don't believe in that, just the fact that meditation, silence, time for me, time to connect with my own soul, with I, the soul, of course that's going to make a huge amount of difference, because then you're connecting with the core values that truly lie within. And when you're just simply materialistic, you get into consumerism, you're just connected with all the things that are distracting you from the self to the world out there. And again, consumerism. You can be the caterpillar and consume till you're ready to burst. But there's never a point of total contentment. There's always something more, something more, something more. We're using 1.5 times the Earth's resources because of consumerism and materialism. And so that state where I'm only connected to matter, materialism, matter, this, instead of spirit behind the skin. So when I connect with the being that I am, then in that awareness, I'm connecting with the qualities that actually lie within. The truth, the joy, the peace, the love, and all the other different qualities that arise from these major qualities. You know, it's like if you've got the 4 primary colors, mix and match and integrate, and you've got all the colors of the rainbow. Well, the 5 primary colors of the soul: peace, love, truth, joy, and purity. These are the fundamental qualities of the inner being. Mix them and match them and integrate them, and you have all the other qualities that were mentioned, not just today, but the qualities that you can think of, all the positive attributes. But it needs that inner journey to be able to connect with these qualities. And so I know that's very much from the individual perspective, but the collective perspective comes into play because most times when people are interested in the subject of meditation, they usually find a little group, a bigger group, whatever it is, but they find others who think the same and connect with them. And so here, for example, we have a beautiful group that comes together, but also then has separate classes in their own language, Hindi and Tamil and English. And when the group is together, it's about 200-300 people. Some days it's more, but we meet together every day. And the ones who don't come here have their own little centres, about 14 centres across London and 40 in the UK. But they come together and it creates a spiritual community, a spiritual family, and sharing ideas that are bringing them together and working with those ideas. And you have a huge support network. And then, of course, that's just in the UK, but it's a network that connects across the world. We study the same teachings every single day. So the things that are being taught in Russia are the same that are being taught in Ukraine. Things that are being taught in Jordan or Lebanon are the same as being taught in Israel. Palestine, we had a group, but it fell apart with all the things that go on. But the people there still continue to meditate. So it's a network in which you can call upon whoever it is you know, and if you need to know more, they'll connect you with other people in other professions. And so, yes, when you spoke about community support, absolutely essential. You sang about the gathering and the community. So it's a very powerful way to create a sense of hope for the future. Why? Because I truly believe that after the darkness, the light comes. And it's not just a crisis in healthcare. It really isn't. The economy, family, religion, any aspect of civilization, name it, and it's in crisis. All our pillars are falling apart because we've forgotten about spirit. We've forgotten about the values that lie within the spirit. And so coming back to that awareness means that we are really able to sort out the system. Sounds simplistic? It is. But it is the only way. And the IDG people have recognized that we've tried so many different things out there. It's not working. Can we look in a different direction? Instead of out there, can we look inwards. And I can see that this is happening in healthcare also, looking inwards to find the answers, to be able to sort things out there, which is actually the right way around. Because where do problems start? It's not in a system, it's in a human being. And sort out the human being, and you sort out the system. The system automatically comes back into place.
Yep.
And so I'm very, very pleased that the subject tonight has been values. And I'm sure that many of you have experimented with contemplation, reflection, meditation. Put a warm invitation for you to try out Raj Yoga. Raja, the sovereign, the mastery. Mastery caught my attention in one of the early slides that you showed. And it works. When I learn to be the sovereign of myself, the self-sovereign, the master of myself, then I can handle things out there. And I can change things out there. Without that state of self-mastery, the world takes over. And I'm overwhelmed, and I lose control. And it's a sad story. But come back to self-mastery, and I now have the capacity, the power with which to sort out things in my little world, but together. I know that there will be light. I know that the day will come. And I know that all of us together can make that happen. Not one individual or 5 people, but people collaborating together with all their wisdom and all their skills. Thank you.
And that's why I love Sister Jayanti. Wisdom of the soul. When I saw that topic, I thought, gosh, how do you answer that question? But Sister Jayanti answered it very simply, is to understand the attributes of the soul, and that is the wisdom of the soul. If we could tap into those and use the values, that we can then create that palette of colours that will help us in our lives. We've got 10 minutes for some questions, but before that, I've got a question for you. Who doesn't meditate regularly? Brilliant. Because I'm going to ask Sister Jayanti to lead us into some meditation, so you're going to get to experience some meditation. So we've got about 10 minutes for some questions. So have a think about some questions that you'd like to ask. But I've got a question. With delivering healthcare in a sustainable way, we are looking to connect with our soul, to get access to the wisdom of the soul, to then imbibe that and then use the values that come out with that. And you've mentioned that meditation is the proven key way to get that meditation mindfulness. But how would you do that if you don't meditate in a system that's under pressure?
If there's darkness, rather than cursing the darkness, if I can just light a little lamp, then maybe that little lamp can show a little bit of illumination around, but have a few lamps together, and you get more and more illumination. This is why I know that you can't change the system as it is, but what you can do is increase your own light, your own capacity, and link up with others who feel the same and are willing to do the same. And I know that once we reach critical mass, things will turn around. So it's not that we have to change the whole world, or even one person at a time to change the whole world, but a few, and a few more, and that critical mass will bring change.
That comes back to IDG. So we've got a roving mic that we're passing around. So if you've got a question that you'd like to ask Sister Jayanti, that was a great time to ask. So you put your hand up and we'll get the mic to you.
That was really beautiful and really kind of touching some part of me. Is the theory behind is that you do the good and the good will come back, but when you do the good, it will attract the others and automatically the system will change?
I don't understand. Can you say it again?
So is the theory is that you keep on doing the good, you do your part, and then the rest will follow?
The theory is that there is good in everyone, but people don't always make the time to look at the good and allow the good to be expressed. And so if it's a few people who are doing that, and people see the change in their lives, that's going to spark others to do the same. And yes, definitely, that's going to spread and grow.
Now, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm not trying to be difficult.
That's
The
okay.
time frame? Like, I've got a chance to ask you, so why not?
I don't think it's far to go now. Once universities get on board and business gurus get on board, we've got two powerful combinations of academia and also the business world. And Peter Senge is still a name that's powerful out there in business, in the corporate world. And University of Lund, Sweden, where people recognize another thing that happened actually here, and again it applies to the world. There's apparently something called the Nordic Group of Ministers, or the Nordic Ministers Group Council. That's the word. The Nordic Ministers Council. And they asked people, what sort of world do you want? The question we asked in 1988. So they're asking people now, how do you see a world that's sustainable? And people have come up with the same thing, values. And so where ministers of government are asking that question, and the woman who was speaking on the same panel as I was, she's a former deputy minister, and now I think she's one of the EU ministers. So it's reaching politics, this idea of values being what people want. And at some point of time, when people want something, the leaders have to listen. I'm sure that's going to happen.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti, for the great talk. I work in the NHS and I'm in a leadership position. And I'm one of those guys who doesn't meditate. So, can I ask a very simple question? Day-to-day life, we deal with conflicts with what's required as a profession, what's required as a medic, what's required as management objectives. What's a very simple way of dealing with that? Is there a simple way?
I think just spend time with yourself. Forget the word meditation. But just spend a little bit of time just going inside, asking yourselves a few questions. How did I do today? Could I have done something differently? What is it that I want to change for tomorrow? Just do a self-audit for a few minutes each night. And I think that can help resolve all the things that create pressure and stress, and just make you grounded and take your own situation into your own hands and deal with that. So complexity is all part of the story of the world out there. But I can make things simple for me and move forward with steadfastness, just simply doing what I need to do in the best way possible. One other very interesting comment, where I'm not doing things that are aligned with my own core values, that's the state in which confusion, depression, loss of self-esteem, all of these things come in. And so I need to get in touch with myself. As I say, forget any other language. Just to know that there are values that I have, and I want to be able to follow those values with commitment. And it's going to work.
Thank you. We've got one question at the front. Before we ask that question, I've got one little question of my own, just to follow on, is this connection with the soul. And we call it soul conscious, where consciousness is based from our soul, the feelings and the values in the soul. So if we are working from a space of soul consciousness and dealing with patients, what do you think that experience will be like for the caregiver and the patient?
I know from the experience of many of those in this room who I've connected with before, if I'm soul conscious, then I win the patient's trust, because I see them not just as the body, I see them as the being in the body, and I'm able to relate to them in a different way. And so, and half of anything is not your words, but the vibrations you emit. For instance, soul consciousness, definitely there's a connection with the individual, with the human being. And so often when people go to the doctor and the doctor knows I've got 5 minutes allocated and the whole system's become quite inhuman, you have to deal with every person in 5 minutes. And you've got to type up the notes in those 5 minutes. It's a very different vibration. And when I see somebody as a human being, as the being that they are, even 30 seconds of that connection creates a different atmosphere. And there's trust. And how many patients trust their doctors today? Big question. But you can build trust within 30 seconds. And so it would make a big difference.
Thank you, thank you. We've got one question at the front.
The mic is here.
Om Shanti. When I do meditate, can it have an influence in my family who are non-meditators to have some settled, turbulent mind of theirs?
My mother started to meditate in 1957 when I was 8 years old. And a few years later, I had decided that this is to be my life. So it must have been some influence. And my father decided to meditate a few years later. And he just surrendered his life to meditation, basically. My brother stayed totally atheist. So that's a story of my family. So yes, it can influence, but my brother will respect what it is I do, but he'll go his own way and I'll go mine.
Societies, when we look at the origin of societies, they started off with a value base, and it was a value-based society. And as we built ourselves up as humans into increasing complexity, it sounds like we were building ourselves to break down in many ways, and there was a regression in human development and human values from that perspective. And now we are in an era of increasingly automated learning and machine learning and all of that, particularly with healthcare. Balancing that out, I mean, personally for me as well as a medic, balancing that out with a value-based system and, incorporating some of the things you were mentioning earlier about IDGs, it can feel particularly frustrating and a bit out of my hands. I mean, all I can do is work on myself, but the system's different. It sounds like it's come around full circle and it's going to start again.
In a way, you're right. We start with a system that is total energy, it gradually loses that energy and the available energy becomes unavailable. And then that system needs an injection of energy from outside. Then you can again begin the system in which everything is working in order. So I think we are at that point where the whole system has lost that energy, and it needs that input of spiritual energy again to restore order within the whole system. So yes, I think that this is what's needed, but I also know that there are many people in this room who are healthcare practitioners and are meditators and are working with their values, and so you'd be very welcome to connect with them. And within that community, of course, then there's a great deal of friendship and respect, but also there's a multiplication of that energy.
My question is just relating to one of the answers Sister Jayanti mentioned about from this gentleman who said that he meditates, but his family members don't, and can he or them benefit from that practice? And your answers used the word your brother being an atheist. So it's just sparked up a question for me, because I'm not particularly religious or tied to any kind of following as such, but I wholeheartedly believe in meditation, mindfulness, and I'm a therapist and going down that line. So I kind of felt that there's no it's a separate thing, if you know what I mean, for me. So what's your thoughts on that? Because I felt that meditation and that was just completely separate from atheist or religion or anything to do with that.
At the heart of every human being are the values they have. And so if that's whatever name I use, but I need to have time for myself to connect with myself so that I'm stable in my own consciousness. And I don't think that meditation is religious as such, but I would say it's spiritual. And every human being is a spirit, not just the physical. There's another part of me which isn't length, width, breadth, and height, or numbers. And so connecting with that part of me is whatever label you use, but that's the spiritual side, and that's what I need to focus on to be able to not just survive but thrive in today's world. I think more than ever, we all need to give self time for myself, to know myself. The light and the dark, both, because both are there within everyone. And so yes, there's goodness, but there's also other things that I need to sort out and deal with. So I need time to look inside.
Okay, so thank you. Some rich questions. Very good. So I think this is the best part now. So we're all going to experience meditation. We've spoken about it. You've heard about it. You've asked questions about it. So I'll ask Sister Jayanti to guide us through meditation.
Meditation is actually in silence, but the question is, well, what am I supposed to do with my mind? Stop it? If I don't stop, what do I do? But in Raj Yoga meditation, we just simply move its direction. Instead of out there, going inside. So I'll share some thoughts as I meditate and invite you to follow these ideas. And the first step would be to just let the body sit comfortably. Both feet on the ground, so you're balanced and your back straight. I know you had a long, hard week and a long day today, but just letting the back be straight and alert means you're able to do a lot of work that otherwise would take a long time. Just that space and relaxation happens beautifully. I go inside and I watch my thoughts. And simply watching my thoughts slows down the speed. And I select one thought, the thought of peace. And as I hold peace in my mind, begin to feel it. Peace in my thoughts and peace filling my whole being. And the thought of peace opens up an inner door and I realize that I carry so many treasures within myself, within my own inner world. There is a treasure store of love, of wisdom, of joy. Within my own sacred space inside. There's purity. These are my own original qualities, the natural qualities that belong to me. And in this awareness of the inner being, the soul, a spark of light, the being that I am, are all the treasures that I need. And as I connect with these treasures, the vibrations of these reach out and touch all those around me. And as others connect with themselves, our vibrations come together and multiply. And the planet is filled with the power of peace and the power of truth. And we move into the day. I hold this vision and this feeling, and I come back to the place and time, here and now. But I keep this experience with myself so that peace and truth and love guide me in my thinking, my speaking, and my doing. Thank you. Om Shanti.